Xenos Yalar's first day at the Galactic Academy ended with a human cadet declaring, "I'm going to show you Xenos why humans have the smartest battle tactics in the galaxy." That brash claim came from Anthony Bailey, Xenos' infuriating human project partner in Battle Tactics 101. As the final scores flashed on the simulation room displays, Xenos stared in stunned disbelief. Against the odds, his and Anthony's unorthodox tactics had secured a decisive victory over the senior cadets. The humans' ridiculous ideas of misdirection and psychological manipulation had actually worked. Intrigued and more than a little perplexed, Xenos approached Anthony after class. "I must admit, your unconventional strategies proved effective," he said, his mandibles twitching. "Perhaps we could discuss the simulation further. I'm curious to understand your thought process." Anthony grinned, his teeth a flash of white against his dark skin. "Sure thing, partner. Let's grab some grub at the cafeteria and break it down." Settling at a corner table with their trays, Anthony launched into an animated explanation of human military history. "See, on Earth, we've always had to be scrappy underdogs," he said around mouthfuls of some pungent human foodstuff called pizza. "We couldn't just rely on superior numbers or tech, so we learned to outthink our enemies, to hit them where they least expected it." His eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as he recounted tales of brilliant human generals and their unorthodox battle plans. Xenos found himself drawn in by Anthony's infectious passion. The humans' insights challenged everything the Ladosian had been taught about the rigid, formulaic nature of proper military strategy. A shadow fell across their table, and Xenos looked up to see Commander Zarn looming over them, her chitinous plates gleaming under the cafeteria lights. Xenos' heart raced beneath his thorax. Praise from the commander was high honor indeed, but her next words sent a jolt of shock through his system. As they left the cafeteria, Anthony was practically vibrating with excitement, but Xenos could only feel a deep sense of trepidation. To embrace this project would mean challenging centuries of Ladosian dogma, risking his reputation and standing among his people. Did he dare take such a leap into the unknown? He looked to his human partner, so full of confidence and enthusiasm. In that moment, Xenos made a decision. No matter the obstacles ahead, he would see this through. Together, he and Anthony would strive to shape the future of warfare itself, forging a new path into an uncertain galaxy. Xenos and Anthony threw themselves into their research project with unbridled enthusiasm. The Academy's vast library became their second home as they pored over ancient human military texts and analyzed historical battles from Earth's turbulent past. Xenos chittered in fascination, his compound eyes absorbing every detail. Fascinating. This asymmetric warfare concept could revolutionize our approach to space combat. As they delved deeper into their work, Xenos felt a growing sense of unease. He knew their unconventional ideas would ruffle feathers among the Ladosian elite. His fears were confirmed when he received a summons to Admiral Zorgax's office. Xenos felt his antennae droop. "Sir, I believe there's value in exploring new tactical approaches." "Enough!" Zorgax cut him off. "This line of inquiry jeopardizes your standing in Ladosian society. Worse, it could lead to your expulsion from the Academy. I strongly advise you to abandon this foolish endeavor immediately." Xenos left the meeting in turmoil. He sought out Professor Zara, finding her in her laboratory surrounded by glowing star charts. Zara's multifaceted eyes studied him carefully. "Xenos, our people have always prided themselves on intellectual rigor. To reject new ideas simply because they challenge our preconceptions, that is the antithesis of true scholarship." Her words galvanized Xenos. With restored dedication, he threw himself back into the project alongside Anthony. They worked tirelessly, refining their theories and running increasingly complex battle simulations. "Emergency alert! Unidentified fleet approaching Galactic Academy space. All cadets report to assembly areas immediately." In the command center, Admiral Zorgax addressed the gathered leadership. "Long-range scans confirm our worst fears. It's the Zorgax Empire. Their fleet outnumbers ours 10-1. Xenos stepped forward, his exoskeleton quivering with a mix of fear and excitement. "We've been researching alternative strategies. If you'll allow us to explain..." As they left the command center to prepare for battle, Xenos felt the weight of countless lives on his shoulders. He turned to Anthony, mandibles clicking nervously. "This is it, my friend. Everything we've worked for comes down to this moment." Anthony grinned, clapping Xenos on his armored back. "Hey, no pressure. We're just saving the entire academy from certain doom. Should be a piece of cake." Fighter Squadrons Alpha through Delta, prepare for hit-and-run strikes on enemy supply lines, Xenos ordered, his mandibles clicking with tension. "Remember, speed and unpredictability are your allies." Anthony leaned in, eyes fixed on the tactical overlay. "Stealth frigates Phantom and Wraith, commence your deep raids. Disrupt their command and control at every opportunity." As the Academy's forces sprang into action, Admiral Zorgax's smug voice crackled over the comms. "Your pitiful guerrilla tactics are beneath contempt. Prepare to be annihilated." But as the battle unfolded, the Admiral's bravado began to waver. Academy fighters darted between lumbering Zorgax cruisers, their precision strikes crippling fuel tankers and munitions transports. Stealth frigates materialized from nowhere, jamming communications and sowing chaos throughout the enemy fleet. "It's working," Xenos breathed, watching fractured Zorgax formations break apart on the tactical display. "But we need a killing blow." Xenos felt his exoskeleton tighten. "We'd need our smallest, fastest ship to get close enough." Their eyes met, and understanding passed between them. Without a word, Xenos sprinted for the hangar bay. Moments later, he rocketed into the void, piloting a tiny stealth fighter barely larger than a Ladosian escape pod. Debris from shattered ships pinged off his hull as he weaved through the chaos of battle. "Entering weapons range," Xenos reported, his antennae twitching as proximity alarms screamed. "Targeting thermal exhaust ports." He squeezed the trigger. Proton torpedoes lanced out, finding their mark with devastating precision. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. As Xenos limped his battered fighter back to the flight deck, the realization of what they'd accomplished washed over him. They had done the impossible, melding Ladosian discipline with human ingenuity to forge a new path to victory. Anthony was waiting as Xenos climbed from the cockpit, his face split by an ear-to-ear grin. "We did it, partner. We actually pulled it off." Xenos felt something unfamiliar, a surge of pride unmarred by the usual weight of Ladosian expectations. "Indeed we did, Anthony. It seems your human battle tactics have some merit after all." As celebrations erupted around them, Xenos knew that nothing would ever be the same. The boundaries between species, between rigid doctrine and adaptive strategy, had been irrevocably blurred. A new era of galactic warfare had begun, and he and Anthony stood at its forefront. "Xenos, Anthony," she chittered softly, "I'm glad you're here. The situation is volatile." "Cadet Xenos Yilar," Zoraya's voice rang out, sharp as a blade. "You stand accused of betraying sacred Ladosian martial principles. How do you plead?" Xenos felt his exoskeleton tighten, but before he could respond, Professor Zara stepped forward. "Esteemed Council, I implore you to consider the bigger picture. Xenos' actions not only saved countless lives, but opened doors to a new era of tactical innovation." Murmurs rippled through the assembled dignitaries. Zoraya's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Innovation? You call embracing primitive human barbarism innovation?" As the debate raged, holographic displays flickered to life, showcasing the recent battle against the Zorgax. Xenos watched as miniature versions of himself and Anthony danced across the tactical grid, their unorthodox maneuvers confounding the enemy at every turn. "Enough!" Zoraya's voice cut through the chatter. "This human has clearly corrupted our once promising cadet with his savage notions. I move to strip Xenos of his rank and—" "If I may address the council." All eyes turned to Anthony as he stepped forward, his voice steady despite the palpable animosity directed his way. He straightened his uniform and began to speak. "From the gates of Troy to the beaches of Normandy," Anthony continued, his words painting vivid pictures, "humanity has always found ways to adapt, to overcome. It's not about abandoning tradition, but evolving it. Just as Anthony concluded his impassioned speech, the chamber doors burst open. Admiral Zorgax strode in, his once pristine uniform now bearing the scars of recent battle. Hours of heated debate followed, with voices raised in both support and condemnation. Finally, as Lados's moons rose high in the night sky, a vote was called. Xenos held his breath as the tallies were counted. When the final result was announced, a narrow victory in favor of tactical integration, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. With a dramatic flourish, she removed her ceremonial helm and slammed it to the ground. The sound echoed through the silent chamber as Zoraya stormed out, leaving a power vacuum in her wake. "Well," Anthony said with a wry smile, "that could have gone worse." Xenos chittered in agreement, but before he could respond, a priority message flashed across his neural interface. His compound eyes widened as he processed its contents. Anthony whistled low. "The Zartanians, that's big league stuff." "The heretics are on the move. Initiate Phase 1. The shadowy figure melted back into the alleyway, leaving Xenos and Anthony oblivious to the brewing storm. As they boarded their transport to the Zartanian Military Academy, anticipation crackled in the air. The journey passed in a blur of frenzied preparation. Xenos and Anthony pored over holographic displays, fine-tuning their presentation on integrated battle tactics. The familiar hum of the ship's engines provided a soothing backdrop to their intense discussions. Their suspicions were confirmed when they reached their assigned quarters. Anthony activated his personal data tablet, only to find it unresponsive. Xenos complied, his compound eyes widening as error messages flooded his vision. "All our research, it's gone. The Academy is under attack. Our defensive systems have gone haywire." Xenos and Anthony exchanged a look of iron will. They had come too far to be deterred now. "We need access to your command center," Anthony said, already moving toward the door. Zix hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." They raced through chaos-filled corridors, dodging panicked attendees and malfunctioning service drones. In the command center, a holographic display showed the full extent of the crisis. Defensive turrets targeted their own ships, while hunter-killer automatons prowled the grounds. "This is no accident," Xenos declared, mandibles clicking as he analyzed the data. "It's a coordinated cyber attack." Anthony nodded, fingers flying over a control panel. "And I bet I know who's behind it. Remember that Zorgax commander we humiliated? Gorzog?" As if on cue, Gorzog's scarred visage appeared on the main screen. "Surprised to see me, upstarts? Your precious symposium is finished. The old ways will prevail." They set to work, their minds in perfect sync. While Xenos devised a series of false data packets to confuse the compromised systems, Anthony reprogrammed a squad of maintenance bots for covert reconnaissance. Suddenly, a massive figure loomed out of the shadows. Gorzog, his cybernetic implants glowing ominously, blocked their path. "You may have outsmarted my systems," he growled, "but let's see how you fare in real combat." The battle raged through narrow corridors and cavernous chambers. Xenos and Anthony, despite their smaller stature, used their environment to their advantage. They led Gorzog on a merry chase, wearing him down with hit-and-run tactics straight from their own research. Finally, in a maintenance bay filled with deactivated drones, they sprang their trap. As Gorzog charged forward, Xenos and Anthony split up, each activating a cluster of drones. The machines whirred to life, surrounding the Zorgax commander in a dizzying array of mechanical limbs and sensors. Caught off guard, Gorzog faltered. It was all the opening they needed. Anthony fired a precision shot, overloading Gorzog's neural implants. The massive alien crashed to the ground, twitching. As they made their way back to the surface, alerts chimed on their communicators. The symposium was back on track, with heightened security and a palpable buzz of excitement. Xenos and Anthony exchanged a weary but triumphant look. They had overcome seemingly insurmountable odds, but the real challenge lay ahead. In mere hours, they would present their revolutionary ideas to the galaxy's military elite, forever changing the face of interstellar warfare. Warfare. As Xenos and Anthony took their places at the podium, a hush fell over the assembled dignitaries. "Esteemed colleagues," Xenos began, his mandibles clicking softly, What we present today will reshape the very foundations of interstellar combat. As they concluded, the auditorium erupted in a cacophony of alien vocalizations, some approving, others skeptical. But before the debate could gain momentum, a figure in the distinctive uniform of the Guardian Fleet approached the stage. Over the next few cycles, Xenos and Anthony found themselves whisked from the academic halls of the Zartanian Military Academy to the austere command centers of the Guardian Fleet. They pored over intelligence reports detailing a surge in pirate activity along the outer corridor trade routes. Anthony nodded, his fingers dancing across a datapad. We'll need to completely overhaul the grid, maybe implement a multi-layered approach with adaptive frequencies. Anthony's eyes narrowed as he rewound the holographic playback. Those corvettes, they're using some kind of advanced stealth tech. We need to adapt our strategy. Xenos clicked excitedly. And spring our trap! Brilliant! They set their plan in motion, rigging shuttle convoys with trackable quantum signatures. The bait was set, the trap primed. All that remained was to wait for Scorvix to take the bait. Days passed in tense anticipation. Then alarms blared across Zenda Gateway. Scorvix's fleet had been detected on approach. This is it, Anthony said, his voice tight with focus. All units, prepare for engagement. As Anthony explained his daring plan, Xenos felt a mixture of admiration and trepidation. It would require perfect timing, flawless execution, and more than a little luck. Let's do it, Xenos said, his exoskeleton tensing with tenacity. They raced through the station's corridors, dodging debris and panicked refugees. Time was running out. If they failed, Zenda Gateway would fall, and with it, the hopes of countless colonists across the outer corridor. As they neared their destination, a massive explosion rocked the station. Klaxons wailed, warning of imminent structural failure. Xenos and Anthony exchanged a grim look. Whatever happened next would determine not just their fate, but the future of galactic colonization itself. The door hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with humming machinery. They sprinted to the main control terminal, dodging sparks from damaged conduits. Anthony's hands blurred across the holographic interface. Initiating power transfer. Now! A deep thrum reverberated through the station. Lights flickered, then blazed to full brightness. On the tactical display, shield icons flared to life. Scorvix, Anthony growled. The pirate warlord's eyes gleamed with malice. Clever trick, but it won't save you. Zenda Gateway will fall, and with it, your pathetic dreams of order in the outer corridor. The transmission cut off abruptly. Xenos and Anthony exchanged a grim look, knowing the real battle had only just begun. Their efforts caught the attention of the Guardian Fleet's high command. Admiral Zixnath, impressed by their success, tasked them with a monumental undertaking, overseeing the implementation of self-governance across the entire Zenda Gateway region. What about General Hala? Anthony suggested, bringing up a holographic dossier. I met her at the Zartanian Symposium. Brilliant tactician, unimpeachable integrity. Xenos clicked his mandibles in approval. An excellent choice. Her Ventari background will also help bridge interspecies divides. This goes deeper than we thought, Hala said, her tentacles writhing with agitation as she presented her findings. High-ranking officers facilitated the raiders' infiltration. They've been playing both sides. Xenos' compound eyes narrowed as he studied the data. Suddenly, they widened with inspiration. I have an idea. It's audacious, but if we pull it off... Xenos and Anthony threw themselves into the monumental task of preparing for transitional elections. They designed innovative democratic processes tailored to the unique cultures of each world, while Anthony spearheaded public education campaigns to overcome ingrained skepticism about abandoning Guardian Fleet control. As Election Day approached, tensions ran high. Isolated incidents of violence erupted, instigated by die-hard reactionaries. But thanks to their meticulous planning and the watchful eyes of their allies, the elections proceeded largely without incident. Before they could formulate a response, Ruvak's militants struck. A devastating coordinated attack on Zenda Gateway itself left the station in flames, its defenses shattered. Xenos' exoskeleton quivered with a mix of fear and grit. Then we'll have to be smarter, faster, and more adaptable than ever before. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity as reports of the Ruvax attack flooded in. Xenos' antennae twitched rapidly, processing the influx of data, while Anthony's fingers flew across holographic interfaces, coordinating defensive measures. "We need to evacuate civilians immediately," Archon Kiris said, her voice firm despite the chaos. "General Hala, can you oversee the operation?" Xenos clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Do it." Anthony activated a secure comm channel, his message racing across light years to Earth. "This is Anthony Reeves at Zenda Gateway. We are under attack by Ruvax forces, requesting immediate military assistance under Protocol Omega-7. As they waited for a response, Xenos coordinated with Hala's evacuation teams. The station shuddered under another barrage from Ruvax warships. "Multiple ships emerging from jump space," Xenos announced. The command center held its breath. Then a familiar voice crackled over the comms. "This is Captain Helena Zhao of the UES Dauntless. Earth heard your call, Zenda Gateway. We're here to help." A cheer went up as the tactical display showed human warships taking up defensive positions around the station. Among the new arrivals was a smaller, sleek vessel that docked directly with Zenda Gateway. Minutes later, the command center doors hissed open. A young human male strode in, flanked by a team of heavily armed operatives. He snapped a crisp salute. "Commander Michael Rayner, Earth Special Operations. We're here to assist with counterinsurgency efforts." Anthony eyed the newcomer warily. "We appreciate the help, Commander, but the Ruvax aren't your typical insurgents. They're xenophobic extremists with advanced tech and fanatical dedication." Rayner's eyes gleamed with a mix of confidence and intensity. "Which is why we need to hit them where they least expect it. I have a plan to infiltrate their ranks and take out their leadership." As Rayner outlined his daring strategy, Xenos felt a surge of admiration for human ingenuity. He and Anthony shared a glance, years of partnership, allowing for silent communication. "It's risky," Xenos chittered, "but it might be our best shot." As the final preparations were made, alarms blared once again. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a massive Ruvax fleet emerging from jump space. "Imperator Solax," Archon Kiris hissed, recognizing the distinctive flagship at the center of the formation. Rayner's face hardened. "Looks like our timetable just got accelerated." He turned to his team. "Gear up, we move in 30 minutes. As the special ops team filed out, Anthony caught Rayner's arm. "Commander, there's something you should know about Solax. Our intelligence suggests he may have fail-safe measures in place. Be prepared for anything." Rayner nodded grimly. "Understood. We'll be ready." Hours passed in nail-biting suspense. Then chaos erupted across Ruvax communication channels. Rayner's voice crackled over the comms. "Phase 1 complete. Moving to engage Solax." The next updates came in fragments, painting a picture of intense close-quarters combat. Finally, Rayner's breathless voice cut through. "Solax is down. I repeat, Solax is neutralized." A collective sigh of relief swept through the command center. But before they could celebrate, alarms blared once again. "Multiple Ruvax ships breaking formation," a sensor operator reported. "They're scattering to the outer colonies." Xenos and Anthony exchanged a grim look. The immediate threat was over, but the war was far from won. As reports of Ruvax remnants going to ground in the underworld of Zenda's colonies came in, they knew their work had only just begun. "We'll need to set up a task force," Anthony said, his mind already racing with plans. "Counterinsurgency operations, outpost stabilization, the works." Xenos nodded, his compound eyes gleaming with tenacity. "And we'll need to work closely with our new human allies. Their tactics could be the key to finally securing lasting peace in this sector." As they began outlining plans for the challenges ahead, Xenos couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. If humans and aliens could come together like this in the face of adversity, perhaps a new era of interstellar cooperation was truly possible. Weeks blurred into months as they methodically dismantled the Ruvax networks. Advanced surveillance drones swept through abandoned mining tunnels and derelict habitation modules, feeding real-time data back to the command center. Their efforts paid off when they cornered Tarvis, a notorious Ruvax agent, in a dilapidated warehouse on Zenda's outskirts. Anthony watched the operation unfold through body cam feeds, his teeth gritted as the strike team moved in. Interrogating Tarvis proved challenging, but revelations trickled in. Anthony's blood ran cold as the Ruvax agent described a bioweapon designed to eradicate genetic contamination. "We need to move now," Xenos declared, his exoskeleton quivering with urgency. "Charges set," Xenos reported, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Detonation in 30 seconds. They barely escaped the inferno, but their victory was short-lived. A human technician, face obscured by a stealth field, slipped away with a data core containing the bioweapon research. "Going once, going twice," the auctioneer's voice rang out. Anthony's heart raced as he placed the winning bid, but his elation turned to dread as a stun field activated around him. He'd been made. Back at Zenda Gateway, they dove into the recovered data. What they found shook them to their core. The Ruvax weren't acting alone. They were pawns in a much larger game. "Xenolath," Anthony whispered, the alien name feeling wrong on his tongue, "and machine intelligence from another galaxy." The implications were staggering. As they pieced together Xenolath's plan for galactic domination, a priority alert flashed across their screens. General Taldex, a high-ranking Ruvax officer, was requesting asylum. "I've seen the truth," Taldex's holographic image flickered before them. "Xenolath has manipulated us for centuries. Their vanguard fleet approaches even now." "We need to convene an emergency summit," Xenos said, already drafting communiques to Earth, the Ladosian Imperium, and other allied systems. Anthony's eyes hardened as he studied the tactical display. "We knew this was coming. Now it's time to put our plans into action." The command center erupted into controlled chaos as orders were relayed across subspace channels. Michael Rayner's voice crackled over the comms, his tone steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Praxor cloud defenses are primed and ready. We've got overlapping fields of fire covering every approach vector." Xenos nodded, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. "Excellent. Initiate Operation Phantom Strike." A fleet of captured Ruvax stealth corvettes shimmered into view on the tactical display, their stealth fields disengaging momentarily. Led by General Taldex, the defector squadron moved with practiced precision, seeding quantum-fracturing mines at key hyperspace junctures. The reprieve was short-lived. Antimatter radiation warheads streaked toward Praxor's shipyards, their destructive potential enough to vaporize entire continents. Rayner's voice rang out, tight with concentration. "Deflector arrays at maximum, brace for impact." The sky above Praxor lit up as the warheads detonated against shimmering energy barriers. Facilities shuddered, but held. In the void of space, Allied squadrons engaged Xenolath's mechanized hordes. Xenos piloted a nimble attack craft, leading a wing of fighters on daring hit-and-run strikes. They wove through debris fields, exploiting gaps in the Xenolath's hive mind coordination. "Now, Anthony," Xenos called out as they punched through the enemy's flank. On cue, slipstream warp gates winked into existence. Captain Hala's Ventari capital ships unleashed a devastating barrage, their energy weapons carving swaths through Xenolath's ranks. But for every machine they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. The Allied forces found themselves slowly pushed back, their tactics faltering against the relentless tide. In the command center, Anthony's eyes narrowed as he pored over intercepted data streams. A pattern emerged, buried deep within Xenolath's processing matrices. "Xenos," he called out, his voice urgent. "I think I've found something, a flaw in their core programming." Anthony's words tumbled out rapidly. "It's a recursive logic loop. Their directive for galactic extermination? It's flawed. If we can introduce a cascading error into their central hub..." Xenos caught on immediately. "We could trigger a systems-wide crash." Xenos squeezed the trigger. The EMP lance discharged, a brilliant pulse of energy lancing toward the heart of Xenolath's consciousness. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Then chaos. Xenolath's armada convulsed, its ships spinning wildly as cascading system failures rippled outward. The hive mind's neural network collapsed, unable to grit the paradox infecting its core. In a matter of minutes, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced was reduced to drifting, inert hulks. Victory had been snatched from the jaws of defeat. Anthony and Xenos shared a weary but triumphant look. They had won the battle, but both knew their work was nowhere near the end. The Ruvax refugees would need resettlement, and the mysteries of Xenolath's origins still loomed. "We should start analyzing the wreckage," Xenos suggested, already formulating plans. "If we can trace Xenolath's point of origin—" Anthony nodded, his eyes fixed on the stars beyond. "We'll be ready next time, no matter what's out there." Xenos chittered in agreement, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic debris field. "Agreed. I'll assemble a team to begin analysis immediately." "Andromeda Galaxy?" Anthony breathed, studying the star charts. "Home of the Rakolian Empire." Hala's eyebrows raised. "Elaborate." Xenos stepped forward, gesturing to a tactical display. "We have deep cover operatives already embedded within Rakolian society. If we can extract them, we might gain invaluable intelligence without alerting the Empire to our intentions." The plan came together swiftly. Anthony coordinated with Taldex, mapping out extraction points and escape routes. Xenos fine-tuned the stealth systems on a squadron of modified shuttles, thus pushing the technology to its limits. But the intelligence they brought back was far more alarming than anyone had anticipated. Anthony's mind raced, piecing together the implications. They're baiting a trap, a synthetic armada powerful enough to conquer the entire galaxy. Xenos paced, his claws clicking against the deck plates. "We can't wait for diplomacy. We need to strike first, hard and fast." Xenos pointed to a console displaying dark energy readings from Andromeda. "We may not have a choice. Look at these readings. The Emperor's new allies are already mobilizing." Xenos' compound eyes gleamed with tenacity. "We unite the Ryakolian resistance with Admiral Hala's fleet and our fortified colonies. Hit them before they can achieve irreversible dominance." As Hala's armada assembled, Anthony and Michael Rayner prepared for their own crucial mission. They handpicked teams of human infiltrators, equipping them with the latest in adaptive camouflage and neural disruptors. "Remember," Anthony briefed the teams, "our job is to sow chaos and disruption across Ryakolian systems. When you see the signal, trigger your uplinks. The insurrection needs to be coordinated and overwhelming." The insertion was tense, a delicate dance of stealth and misdirection. Anthony held his breath as the teams dispersed across Andromeda, melting into the shadows of towering alien metropolises. Days passed in a haze of covert operations and near misses. Anthony's team narrowly avoided detection multiple times, relying on quick thinking and quicker reflexes. Anthony watched from a commandeered security hub as Xenos' fleet punched through, linking up with the resurgent ground forces. The battles that followed were brutal, a test of tactical brilliance against overwhelming numbers. In the heart of the Imperial throne room, Anthony faced down the Rakolian Emperor. The alien monarch's eyes darted wildly, realizing the full magnitude of his miscalculation. "It's over," Anthony said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Call off your forces." For a moment, it seemed the Emperor might resist. Then slowly he reached for the communication panel. The order to stand down rippled across Andromeda, bringing the chaotic battles to a stuttering halt. In the aftermath, as the dust settled and damage reports flooded in, Anthony found Xenos overseeing the integration of moderate Rakolian elements into the Allied systems. "We did it," Anthony said, the words feeling inadequate for the scale of what they'd accomplished. Xenos nodded, his antennae drooping with exhaustion. "We did. But this is just the beginning. The synthetic threat is still out there, somewhere beyond our borders." As if in response to his words, a priority alert flashed across a nearby console. New long-range sensor data, hinting at anomalous energy signatures from an unexplored sector of space. The priority alert flashed insistently, demanding their attention. Xenos leaned in, his compound eyes scanning the data readout. "Energy signatures unlike anything we've encountered," he muttered, antennae twitching with concern. Before Anthony could respond, a holotransmission burst to life. The stern visage of Grand Marshal Zorlak filled the air, his mandibles. Commander Xenos, your presence is required on Ledos immediately. The situation is dire. Xenos straightened, his exoskeleton creaking. Understood, Marshal. I'm en route. He turned to Anthony, conflict evident in his posture. I must go. This summons takes precedence. The journey to Ledos passed in a blur of faster-than-light travel and tense anticipation. As Xenos' shuttle descended through the planet's swirling atmosphere, he could already see signs of mobilization. Defense platforms powering up, squadrons of fighters patrolling in tight formation. Xenos studied the display, his strategic mind racing. Their weaponry, it defies known physics. For hours they debated strategy. Xenos drew upon every lesson learned fighting alongside Anthony and the humans, pushing for asymmetric warfare and unpredictable tactics. We can't match their firepower, he argued, but we can offset it with chaos. Xenos was in the midst of countering a particularly vocal opponent when alarms blared. A junior officer burst in, mandibles quivering. Harbinger Vanguard detected. They've jumped into the Nix-9 system. The room exploded into action. Xenos sprinted to the command center, barking orders into his comm unit. Initiate Protocol Sigma. All ships, execute pre-planned withdrawal vectors. We need more time, Xenos muttered, frantically analyzing escape corridors. An idea struck, born of desperation and Anthony's influence. He opened a heavily encrypted channel. This is Commander Xenos to Kilrathi House Rendrak, invoking blood debt owed to Anthony Michaels. Your assistance is required. For agonizing moments, there was only static. Then a gravelly voice rumbled through. This is Jilkrin. Speak quickly, Arthan. Xenos outlined the situation rapidly, appealed to the Kilrathi's love of battle and glory. Strike hard, strike fast. Give us the openings we need to withdraw and regroup. For days, Xenos orchestrated a fighting retreat across multiple star systems. Rendrak's forces struck like lightning, crippling Zychron's supply lines and sabotaging jump drives. But the Harbinger fleet's technological superiority was undeniable, inexorably pushing forward despite mounting losses. Just as Xenos began to hope the strategy might work, Zilkran's flagship hailed him. The Kilrathi's face was a mask of conflicting emotions. Our alliance ends here, Arthen. Your human... Anthony. Zychron has him. Xenos felt his heart stop. What? How? Captured during deep recon. The blood debt is superseded. Zilkran's eyes narrowed. But we are not without honor. For the right price, we will attempt a rescue. Xenos's mind raced, weighing options. The Harbinger fleet posed an existential threat, but Anthony, he made his decision. Name your price, we're going after him. As preparations for the daring rescue mission began, long-range scans revealed Zychron's main fleet consolidating at the galactic core. Xenos stared at the tactical display, antenna twitching with dedication. Whatever happened next would shape the fate of multiple civilizations. The coordinates were set, the assault teams readied. Xenos took a deep breath, knowing the challenges that lay ahead. Without a word, he gave the order to jump. Xenos gave the order, and the fleet surged forward. Space itself seemed to warp and twist as their ships engaged their warp drives, hurtling towards the galactic core where Zychron's forces awaited. The Ledosian commander's antennae twitched nervously as he turned to face Jilkran, the Kilrathi leader's massive frame dominating the bridge. Our window of opportunity is narrow, Xenos said, his compound eyes reflecting the swirling starfield on the main view screen. Are your stealth commandos ready? Jilkran's lips pulled back in a predatory grin, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. My warriors thirst for battle, Arthen. We will not fail. As they emerged from warp, the sheer scale of Zychron's armada became apparent. Thousands of ships stretched as far as the eye could see, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly sheen that spoke of technology far beyond their own. The massive structure loomed before them, a sprawling labyrinth of interconnected facilities that pulsed with energy. It was the linchpin of the Harbinger fleet's operations, and their primary target. Xenos's voice rang out across the command frequency. All units execute Operation Shatterpoint. May fortune favor the bold. The battle erupted in a cacophony of weapons fire and explosions. Gilkran's Kilrathi stealth commandos, cloaked by Professor Zara's scramblers, slipped past the outer defensive lines. Their ships, nearly invisible against the backdrop of space, punched through the forge's containment field. The Ladosian commander nodded, his fingers flying over the control panel. Uploading Professor Zara's virus now. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a chain reaction tore through the forge. Massive explosions ripped through its superstructure, venting megatons of reactor fuel into the void. The resulting detonation was bright enough to momentarily overwhelm the view screen's filters. As if on cue, a priority transmission cut through the chaos. One of Rendrak's deep cover operatives, voice distorted by encryption, relayed critical intelligence. Human prisoner located. Aboard Zychron's command Dreadnought. Designation, Scourge Lord. Xenos' mandibles clicked with purpose. Understood. All units, form up on my position. We're going in. Evasive maneuvers, he barked. His ship lurched as the pilot executed a series of wild corkscrews, narrowly avoiding searing lances of energy. The resistance was immediate and overwhelming. Zychron's xenomorph cyborgs swarmed from every direction, a nightmarish fusion of biological horror and cold machine efficiency. Xenos' team fought with desperate intensity, energy weapons carving swaths through the endless tide of monstrosities. A familiar voice crackled over his comm unit. Looking for someone? Xenos' antenna perked up in disbelief. Colonel Rayner? Relief and exasperation warred within Xenos as he relayed the new orders to his team. They fought their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the Scourge Lord, finally emerging into the cavernous hangar. Before the Ladosian could respond, the ship rocked violently. Gilkran's voice boomed over the comms. We're out of time. Zychron's counterattack is imminent. War and destruction. As they cleared the Scourge Lord's gravity well, Xenos allowed himself a moment of relief. They had struck a significant blow against Zychron's forces, but the cost had been high. Status report, he barked, antenna twitching as he surveyed the battlefield. Before Xenos could respond, alarms blared across the command deck. A junior officer's mandibles quivered as he reported, Sir, long-range scans detecting massive energy surges from the galactic rim. The dark regions, Commander. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. By the void, Taldex whispered, his usual bravado gone. If these readings are accurate... The next hours passed in a blur of frantic planning and desperate calculations. Xenos convened an emergency war council, the holoprojectors flickering to life with faces both familiar and new. Michael Rayner's grizzled visage appeared alongside a stern-looking human woman Xenos didn't recognize. Admiral Mirren, Earth's elite Vanguard Corps, she introduced herself curtly. Let's cut to the chase. We're looking at an extinction-level event if we don't act fast. It's a long shot, Rayner growled, but it's the only play we've got. As the Allied forces mobilized, Xenos found himself shoulder to shoulder with Anthony, preparing to board one of the strike team shuttles. The human's face was set in steadfast perseverance. I've got a bad feeling about this one. Bug boy, Anthony muttered. Xenos' mandibles clicked in what passed for a Ladosian smile. When don't you? The journey to the dark regions was harrowing. Blind warp jumps pushed their navigation systems to the limit, and more than once Xenos feared they'd emerge in the heart of a star. But as they dropped out of warp, the true horror revealed itself. All ships, weapons free! Admiral Mirren's voice crackled over the comms. Hit them with everything we've got! We need to overload it! Xenos shouted over the cacophony of battle. Anthony, set the charges! But as they worked, a sickening realization dawned. The detonation would trigger a cascade reaction, one that would almost certainly consume anyone in its path. Xenos hesitated for a fraction of a second, every fiber of his being screaming to stay. But duty won out. He clasped Anthony's shoulder once, then led the rest of the team in a desperate sprint for extraction. They were barely clear when the world went white. The shockwave flung their shuttle like a toy, alarms blaring as systems failed. Through the viewports, Xenos watched as reality itself seemed to tear and buckle. When it was over, when the sensors finally stopped screaming and the comms crackled back to life with reports of victory, Xenos felt hollow. They had won, but at what cost? Xenos stood motionless on the bridge, surrounded by celebrations he couldn't bring himself to join. His antenna drooped as he stared out at the stars, now seeming colder and more distant than ever before. But as the adrenaline of battle faded, a new dread began to creep in. They had delayed the archonic threat, but for how long? And what other lurked in the depths of space waiting for their moment to strike? Xenos straightened, his exoskeleton creaking as he turned to face his crew. There would be time to mourn later. For now, there was work to be done. Xenos stood motionless before the memorial, its sleek obsidian surface etched with the names of those lost in the battle against the archonic entity. His compound eyes lingered on one name in particular, Anthony Rayner. A priority alert jolted him from his reverie. Grand Marshal, his aide's voice crackled through his neural implant. Unidentified fleet detected entering Coalition space. You're needed on the command deck immediately. Xenos' exoskeleton whirred as he strode purposefully through the corridors of Coalition Command. The atmosphere was tense, officers of a dozen species working in coordinated precision. Admiral Krelax, her tentacles writhing with agitation, brought up a holographic display. Long-range scans show an armada emerging from the galactic rim. Their cloaking technology is unprecedented. Xenos leaned in, his antenna twitching as he absorbed the data. Those energy signatures, impossible. Sir? Those are antimatter cannons, human antimatter cannons. The revelation sent shockwaves through the command center. Before anyone could react further, a transmission cut through their communications. The face on the screen was a twisted mirror of his old friend, familiar features contorted by grief and hatred. You remember me, Bug, Michael spat. Good. Remember this too. Humanity will no longer be shackled by your so-called coalition. We have the power now, and we're taking back what's ours. The transmission cut off abruptly. Seconds later, alarms blared across every deck. Multiple impacts detected, an officer shouted. Key shipyards in sectors 7 through 12 are under heavy bombardment. Xenos' mind raced, piecing together the fragments of intelligence. Human separatists, dark energy tech, a conspiracy born of grief and twisted ideology. They had to act fast. All ships, battle stations, he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. Initiate emergency protocols Sigma-7. We need to buy time to evacuate civilian centers. As the coalition fleet scrambled to respond, Xenos felt the weight of command settle heavily upon him. He had faced cosmic horrors and reality-warping anomalies, but this, a war against the son of his closest friend, might be his greatest challenge yet. The battle for the future of the galaxy had begun, and Xenos knew that every decision he made from this moment on would shape the fate of countless worlds. Xenos stood before the massive view screen, his compound eyes reflecting the swirling colors of hyperspace. The years since Michael's rebellion had been filled with reconstruction and tentative peace, but a new challenge loomed on the horizon. Incoming transmission, Grand Marshal, his aide announced. It's Chancellor Vorlath of the Ryax Republic. Xenos felt his antenna twitch in surprise. Me? Surely there are others more qualified. I accept, Chancellor. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Xenos traveled from system to system, calling in old favors and forging new alliances. General Taldex was the first to commit, his Rakolian interdictors a welcome addition to the fleet. Just like Taldex grinned, clapping Xenos on its back with enough force to stagger a lesser being. But it was Earth that gave Xenos pause. As his shuttle approached the orbital defense platform, he received an urgent communique from General Mirren. We've got a situation down here. Mirren's face was drawn, her usual composure cracking. Attempted coup by some xenophobic hardliners. We've contained it, but... Xenos felt his heart sink. What about Earth's commitment to the Alliance? Mirren's expression softened slightly. That's the good news. Michael Rayner stepped up. He's been promoted to Fleet Admiral, and he's pledged Earth's vanguard fleets to your cause. With Earth's forces secured, the Grand Alliance fleet took shape. Xenos stood on the bridge of the flagship, surveying the armada spread out before him. Ships of a dozen different designs, crewed by beings from across the galaxy, all united under a single banner. "Sir," a young officer called out, her voice tight with fear. "We're detecting massive energy fluctuations along the galactic rim. It's consuming entire systems." Xenos leaned over the sensor readouts, his antenna twitching as he processed the information. "The Xenocide," he whispered, the name sending a chill through the bridge crew. "All ships, battle stations," Xenos commanded, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his hearts. "Set course for the Ravenna Trail. We're the only thing standing between this horror and the rest of the galaxy." The Disprol system came into view, and Xenos felt his exoskeleton tighten at the sight. The outer defense ring was shattered, debris fields where millions had once lived and worked. And at the center of it all, a writhing mass of twisted metal and flesh, the Xenocide's advanced swarm. Amidst the carnage, Xenos spotted a weakness, a fluctuation in the Xenocide's energy field. "There!" he shouted, highlighting the anomaly on the tactical display. "That's our way in. Zara, prep the Singularity Lances." The Ladosian weapons punched through the multidimensional shielding, exposing the monstrous hub form at the heart of the Xenocide swarm. Xenos saw his chance and took it. "All ships, concentrate fire on that breach. Everything you've got." Xenos' antenna twitched as he studied the datapad, his compound eyes narrowing at the implications. "Assemble the Strategic Council," he ordered, his exoskeleton whirring as he turned to face the view screen. "We have a new threat to address." Grand Marshal Taldex smacked his head on the table. "Then we strike now, while they're still gathering. Honor demands—" "Honor won't mean much if we're all dead," Chancellor Vorlath cut in, her scales shimmering as she leaned forward. "I support Admiral Rayner's proposal for stealth reconnaissance." Xenos nodded, his antenna drooping slightly. "Agreed. Michael, assemble your team. We need eyes in that void." A chill ran through the room. Xenos felt his exoskeleton constrict involuntarily. "We need to act fast. I'm calling an emergency summit." As coalition forces scrambled to fortify key systems, Zilkran, the Kilrathi mercenary leader, cornered Xenos in a corridor. "Your diplomacy has its place," Zilkran growled, "but this calls for action. Let my clans lead the charge. We'll gut these dimension-hopping bastards before they know what hit them." Xenos studied the grizzled warrior, weighing the risks. Finally, he nodded. "Coordinate with Admirals Hala, Rayner, and Taldex. We strike as one." "Zilkran's located the central hub." Rayner's voice cut through the chaos. "He's drawing their fire. Now's our chance." Xenos gave the order, and Zara's team launched the Arcano Disruptor. For a heartbeat, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a silent flash that burned itself into Xenos' retinas, the black crucible began to implode. "All ships, disengage!" Xenos commanded. "Rayner, get us out of here." The threat they had faced was merely a puppet, and something far darker was pulling the strings from beyond the galactic rim. Xenos stared at the swirling data streams, his compound eyes struggling to process the sheer volume of information flooding the Vindicator's systems. What they had uncovered sent chills through his exoskeleton. "Admiral Rayner, Chancellor Vorlath," he said, his voice steady despite the growing dread in his hearts. "We need to convene the War Council immediately." Hours later, the Grand Alliance's leadership gathered in the Vindicator's war room. Holograms flickered to life, displaying star charts and complex mathematical equations. Admiral Rayner leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "A vanguard for what, exactly?" Xenos took a deep breath. "An extragalactic civilization we're calling the Convergence Empire. Their technology, it's orders of magnitude beyond our own. They can bypass space-time barriers, targeting multiple universes simultaneously." The cacophony of voices, Chancellor Vorlath's scales rippled with alarm. "How is that even possible?" Professor Zara stepped forward, her tentacles twisting nervously. They've developed interdimensional field manipulation devices. Our current countermeasures are useless against such technology. There might be a way, he said, activating a new holographic display. It's based on human research into extra-dimensional warp manifolds. We call it the Manisolus vector theory. As Rayner explained the concept, Xenos felt a glimmer of hope. It was risky, untested, but it presented their only chance of outmaneuvering the Convergence's incursions. Weeks later, Xenos stood on the bridge of the Vindicator, watching as Rayner's task force prepared for their maiden voyage. Rayner nodded, his face set with tenacity. We'll make contact as soon as we can. Hold the fort while we're gone. The task force vanished in a flash of otherworldly energy, leaving Xenos and the remaining Alliance forces to wait in tense silence. But what, Michael? Xenos pressed. The Convergence is already here. We've detected their war machines ravaging other realities. We need to... Sir, a sensor officer called out, we're detecting an entropy wave approaching our sector. Xenos' mind raced. The Convergence had found them. There was only one option left. All ships prepare for emergency jump, he ordered. Initiate vector initiations, no predetermined coordinates. As the Alliance fleet engaged their drives, Xenos watched the entropy wave close in. In a blinding flash, the ships vanished, scattering across the multiverse. When Xenos' vision cleared, he found himself in an unfamiliar star system. The Vindicator's sensors struggled to make sense of their new reality. His second-in-command, a Ventari named Kala, shook her head. Sir, we've lost contact with Admiral Rayner, Zilkran, Admiral Hala, and General Taldex. Our fleet, it's been fragmented across different dimensions. As the gravity of their situation sank in, new data poured in from their multiversal sensors. Xenos felt his heart sink as he processed the information. By the spirits, he whispered. They've assimilated millions of parallel Earths, entire cosmological membranes, gone. Kala looked at him, her eyes wide with fear. What do we do now, sir? Xenos straightened, his exoskeleton whirring as he turned to face his crew. We find a way to bring our forces back together, and then we take the fight to the Convergence's hyperdimensional nexus. Xenos' antennae twitched as he processed the influx of data streaming across the Vindicator's command interface. The scattered Alliance forces had begun to coalesce, drawn together by quantum entanglement beacons planted across the multiverse. Sir, we've established contact with Admiral Rayner's task force, Kayla reported, her voice tinged with relief. They've successfully disrupted a Convergence incursion in the Valkyrian realm. Xenos nodded, his compound eyes fixed on the holographic display. Patch him through. Rayner's face materialized, his features etched with fatigue but resolute. Xenos, you're not going to believe this. We've forged an alliance with the Valkyrian Prime. These gynoid artificials are formidable, and they're on our side now. As if on cue, multiple comm channels lit up. General Taldex's gruff voice cut through first. Grand Marshal, the Arabians are with us. Their Arcanotech is unlike anything I've ever seen. Admiral Hala's transmission came through last, her normally stoic demeanor tinged with awe. Sir, we've made contact with entities called the Aten. They exist beyond our dimensional understanding, but they're offering us weapons of unimaginable power. Xenos felt a surge of hope as he absorbed the news. Well done, all of you. But our greatest challenge lies ahead. We need to unify these disparate forces into a cohesive fighting unit. Xenos nodded, his exoskeleton whirring as he turned to face the assembled leaders of the Multiversal Alliance. The plan is audacious, I know, but it's our only chance to strike at the heart of the Convergence. Admiral Rayner leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And that's our ticket past the Convergence's trans-brain screening? Precisely, Xenos confirmed. Professor Zara's hypermatter warp bubble will stabilize the singularity, creating a naked tangent point in space-time. It's a 1,000,000,000,000 shot, but it's our best hope. As the final preparations were made, Xenos felt the weight of countless lives across multiple universes resting on his shoulders. He watched as Rayner, Taldex, and Zilkran coordinated their respective fleets, positioning them beyond the cosmic border. Initiating unified coherence sequence, Zara announced, her tentacles dancing across the control panel. Xenos held his breath as Arabian arcane matrices flared to life, their eldritch energies intertwining with the precise calculations of Yevothan probability aligners. The fabric of reality itself seemed to shudder as the forces converged on Zara's hypermatter singularity. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soundless explosion of light, an infinitesimal keyhole opened in the very structure of space-time. Xenos felt a lurching sensation as the Vindicator, along with the entire multiversal armada, was pulled into the higher dimensional realm. As his vision cleared, Xenos found himself staring at a vista that defied comprehension. The Convergence's core reality sprawled before them, a twisted labyrinth of impossible geometries and writhing energy fields. The unified fleet surged forward, weapons of a dozen realities blazing as they plunged into the heart of the Convergence. Xenos' compound eyes struggled to process the twisted labyrinth of impossible geometries sprawling before them. Energy fields writhed and pulsed, defying the laws of known physics. "All ships maintain formation," Xenos commanded, his exoskeleton whirring as he leaned forward. "Professor Zara, initiate deep scans." Xenos' antenna twitched as he processed the incoming data. "Admiral Rayner, take your human vanguard on an interdiction run against those outlying processor hubs. General Taldex, I want your Rakolian warhost providing perimeter overwatch." As Rayner and Taldex acknowledged their orders, Xenos turned to the feline warrior at his side. "Zilkran, I need your Kilrathi berserkers to punch through that abyssal singularity fronting their transspatial nexus. Draw their fire." The battle unfolded with brutal intensity. Rayner's sleek frigates darted between reality folds, unleashing precise strikes against the Convergence's processing nodes. Taldex's Ryokolian battlecruisers formed an impenetrable barrier, their Arcano shields deflecting waves of entropic decay. Zilkran's voice crackled over the comms. "Entering the abyss now, Xenos. These bastards won't know what hit them." The Ventari dreadnoughts emerged from dimensional fold space, their massive forms dripping with weaponry. Disruptor lances lashed out, pummeling the Empire's heavily fortified reality anchors. As breach points opened in the Convergence's defenses, Xenos knew it was time for their most daring gambit. "Professor Zara, initiate hypermatter detonation sequence." Zara's tentacles danced across her control panel. "Cascading warhead primed and ready, sir. Exotic Arcano particle infusion stable." Xenos took a deep breath. "Execute!" The hypermatter warhead streaked across dimensional barriers, its detonation triggering a meta-entropic cascade. Reality itself seemed to shudder as innumerable quantum substrings binding the Convergence's higher dimensional operating frameworks began to collapse. "By the spirits," Xenos whispered, his antenna drooping in horrified realization. "Taldex, pull back!" Xenos shouted, but it was too late. The Rakolian warhost crumbled under reverse entropy bombardment, their once mighty warriors reduced to withered husks. Zilkran's voice cut through the chaos. "We can't break free! The time loops!" His transmission cut off abruptly as the Kilrathi charge became trapped in repeating stasis fields. Xenos stood alone on the bridge of the Vindicator, watching as his allies vanished one by one. The weight of countless universes pressed down upon him, but he refused to yield. The resulting nova blazed with impossible brightness, emitting esoteric theta-gradiated waveforms that tore through the fabric of reality. The Overmind's hyper-transcendental manifolds began to fracture under the assault. Xenos felt the Vindicator buckling around him as the Overmind initiated reality escalation. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. "Computer, set collision course for the Nexus rupture," he commanded. As the Vindicator plunged towards its final destination, Xenos closed his eyes. The ship impacted, and reality itself shattered. In the formless void between realities, Xenos' consciousness endured. Time lost all meaning as he kept vigil over the entropic prison containing the Overmind. He witnessed the birth of a new cosmos, watching as quantum fluctuations coalesced into matter and energy. On a speck of interstellar dust, life stirred once more. Xenos observed as primitive protoplasm evolved, eventually giving rise to a familiar form: humans. He watched their journey from agrarian tribes to spacefaring civilizations with a sense of déjà vu. In a training simulation, Alaric's eyes narrowed as he analyzed the holographic display of a convergence drone formation. There, he pointed, that's their weak point. If we approach from this vector, we can exploit the gap in their sensor coverage. Alaric's lips curved into a confident smile. We don't. We use their own weapons against them. Months later, Alaric stood before a diverse group of alien cadre leaders. His homeworld had just been ravaged by a convergent scout ship, and he proposed a daring counterattack. We can infiltrate their vessel using asymmetrical slipstream insertion, Alaric explained, gesturing to a holographic model. Once inside, we'll redirect their antimatter warheads to overload the central reactor. Vakara, now an ally, nodded in agreement. It's audacious, but it might just work. The strike team assembled, a mix of species united by Alaric's vision. As they prepared to board their stealth insertion craft, Alaric felt a strange sensation, as if an ancient presence was guiding his actions. Warheads primed, Jury announced, his tendrils retracting from the ship's interface. Alaric nodded. Now we run. They sprinted through tachyon corridors as alarms blared. Behind them, a chain reaction began, antimatter cascading through the ship's systems. As the council erupted into discussion, Alaric stood quietly, his mind racing with possibilities. Unbeknownst to him, Xenos' essence stirred, sensing the rekindling of hope across the cosmos. Alaric Trine's eyes snapped open, his palms sweating from the vivid dream vision that had just faded. The ghostly presence of Xenos lingered, a cosmic tutor whispering ancient wisdom. He sat up in his quarters aboard the Orlath Academy station, the starfield outside his viewport a reminder of the vast, dangerous universe humanity now faced. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Vakara Korath strode in, her insectoid form graceful, despite its alien nature. "Another successful simulation, Alaric. The Council is intrigued by your methods." Alaric nodded, standing to face his unlikely ally. "And how many of them called me a reckless fool this time?" Vakara's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Only half. Progress by their standards." As they discussed the latest training exercises, Alaric's datapad chirped. A message from Jury, marked urgent. He scanned it quickly, his expression darkening. "Possibly," Alaric replied. "Jury's detected unusual activity near the Viridian quarantine zones. We might need to accelerate our plans." Hours later, Alaric stood before a diverse group of cadets in a secure briefing room. Among them was Zeralia, her luminescent skin pulsing with barely contained excitement. "Today's exercise will be unconventional," Alaric began. "We'll be running an infiltration scenario based on real-world parameters. Your objective, retrieve data from a restricted archaeological site while evading robotic sentinels." Alaric nodded, a mix of pride and unease settling in his gut. Perhaps too well, the Viridian establishment won't take kindly to this level of innovation. The backlash was swift and brutal. Alaric found himself summoned before a tribunal of stern-faced Viridian elders, their expressions a mix of outrage and fear. The chamber erupted in chaos. As guards moved to seize him, Alaric tapped a hidden communicator. Instantly, the lights flickered and died. When they returned seconds later, Alaric was gone. He materialized aboard a waiting stealth shuttle, Zeralia at the controls. "I hoped it wouldn't come to this," she said, her voice tinged with both excitement and regret. Years passed, and Alaric's influence spread across the stars like wildfire. His teachings, born from Xenos' cosmic wisdom, ignited the imaginations of the oppressed and disenfranchised throughout known space. On Draxus Prime, Alaric stood beside Jury, watching as autonomous mechadrones emerged from subterranean forges. The Marazen artificer's crystalline eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Your strategies have given us the edge we needed," Jury said, his tendrils weaving complex patterns in the air. The Imperial enforcers never saw it coming. Months later, Alaric found himself aboard Vakara Korath's flagship, observing a holographic display of the Hakarian naval blockade. Prax Mandrite dreadnoughts loomed ominously, their massive forms dwarfing Vakara's strike cruisers. "Now," Vakara commanded, her mandibles clicking with tenacity. On Urstath, Alaric stood beside Zoralia as she addressed a sea of liberated Verdians. The atmosphere crackled with energy as she declared their independence, ceremonially shattering the chains of authoritarian control. Alaric's gaze drifted to Laraska, his former student now elevated to admiral. The young Verdian's eyes shone with fierce tenacity as he oversaw the deployment of system defense grids, prepared for any potential reprisal. As unrest spread further across the galaxy, Alaric found himself thrust into the spotlight. He embarked on a whirlwind speaking tour, his words inspiring countless others to action. On a hive world, he met Ramaz, a young activist who had seized control of orbital refineries using tactics derived from Alaric's teachings. "Your strategies allowed us to outsmart the governance drones," Ramaz explained, gesturing to the crippled enforcement units. "We starved them of resources, just as you taught." Alaric nodded, a mix of pride and unease settling in his chest. The scope of the changes he had set in motion was becoming clear, and with it, the potential for both great progress and unforeseen consequences. During a state visit to Zoralia's palace, that unease crystallized into stark reality. Alarms blared as Laraska's defense grid detected an incoming threat. "Stealth incursion!" Laraska's voice crackled over the comm. "Unknown assailants breaching the east wing." Zyralia's Praetorians sprang into action, securing the area as Alaric moved to investigate. He slipped away from his security detail, drawn by an inexplicable intuition. In a shadowed corridor, Alaric came face to face with a lone assassin preparing an ambush. Time seemed to slow as recognition dawned. Michael Rayner, son of Alaric's late mentor, stood before him. Gone was the eager young cadet Alaric had once known. In his place stood a hardened killer, eyes burning with hatred. Alaric's mind raced, pieces falling into place. Anthony Rayner's disappearance, Michael's absence from the academy, the rise of extremist anti-alien factions. It all led to this moment. "Michael, listen to me," Alaric began, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Your father would never have wanted this." As the two men faced off, the weight of their shared history and divergent paths hung heavy in the air. Alaric knew that whatever happened next would shape not only their fates, but the future of the galaxy itself. Alaric's world exploded into chaos. Michael's weapon discharged, but instead of a lethal blast, a swirling vortex of nanites erupted between them. Zyralia burst through the door, her luminescent skin pulsing with frantic energy. She thrust her hands forward, projecting a shimmering force field that contained the swarm. "Alaric, move!" she shouted, strain evident in her voice. He dove aside as Zoralia manipulated the field, compressing the nanites into a dense, crackling sphere. With a final surge of effort, she collapsed the field into a singularity, trapping the techno-viral threat in stasis. Michael stumbled back, his eyes wide with a mixture of madness and awe. "You don't understand," he rasped, his voice distorted by an electronic undertone. "This is evolution. This is freedom." Before Michael could respond, the room shook violently. Alarms blared throughout the complex. They raced through corridors, bathed in pulsing red emergency lights. Outside, the sounds of battle echoed, energy weapons discharging, explosions rocking the foundations. They rounded a corner to find a group of Aegis soldiers in full battle gear. Alaric reacted instinctively, drawing on Xenos' cosmic intuition. He dove and rolled, coming up behind a pillar as plasma bolts seared the air around him. Zyralia's bioluminescence flared, temporarily blinding their attackers. In that moment of confusion, Alaric struck. He moved with fluid precision, disarming two soldiers before they could react. She nodded and sprinted down the corridor. Alaric engaged the remaining soldiers, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to anticipate their moves. "Uplink terminated," Jury announced over the comm. "Drones over Draxus neutralized." He found Zoralia in a high-security lab, helping a weakened Laraska to her feet. The young admiral's eyes were unfocused, her movements unsteady. They made their way to an extraction point, dodging pockets of resistance. Ramaz's mercenaries provided cover fire as they boarded a waiting shuttle. As they lifted off, Alaric watched the Aegis facility recede into the distance. The magnitude of what they'd uncovered greatly troubled upon him. "It's," said quietly, "Michael may be contained, but there are others out there. Sleeper agents, death cults, all aligned with this machine apocalypse." Alaric nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. As they sped towards the safety of Allied space, he couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The specter of the convergence loomed large, threatening to unravel everything they'd fought so hard to build. The Verdian scientist's bioluminescence pulsed with nervous energy. "He's secured in a quantum stasis field, but the nanites are still active. They're evolving." A priority alert flashed across the display. Ramaz's face appeared, his usually stoic features twisted with panic. "Alaric, we've lost control of the hive refineries on Halvaria Prime. The nanoswarms, they're consuming everything." The bridge erupted into frantic activity. Vakara barked orders, mobilizing her battle groups to establish a quarantine perimeter. Alaric felt the weight of countless lives pressing down upon him. "We need to strike at the source," he declared, turning to Zyralia. "Can we breach Michael's stasis lock?" Her luminescence flickered uncertainly. "It's possible, but incredibly dangerous. The singularity containment—" An explosion rocked the ship, cutting her off. Alarms blared as Jury's voice came over the comms. "Cultists, saboteurs, and engineering? They've activated some kind of protomolecular device." He met her gaze, allowing himself a moment of vulnerability. "I know, but we're out of alternatives." With a deep breath, Alaric stepped into the projection field. Reality fractured around him, his consciousness hurled across dimensional boundaries. He found himself in a twisted landscape of fractals and impossible geometries, the prison of Michael's corrupted mind. "Hello, old friend," Michael's distorted voice echoed. "Come to join the revolution?" Alaric settled into a fighting stance, muscles tensed for action. "I've come to end this, Michael, for both our sakes." The air crackled with malevolent energy as Michael's form shifted, becoming something monstrous and inhuman. Alaric steeled himself, knowing the fate of galaxies hung in the balance of what came next. Alaric's consciousness plunged deeper into the quantum realm, leaving his physical form behind. Zyralia's brow furrowed as she manipulated the singularity lenses, her luminescent skin pulsing with the effort of maintaining Alaric's tenuous connection to reality. Within the virtual domain, Alaric found himself surrounded by a maelstrom of corrupted data. Michael's megastructure loomed before him, a towering monstrosity of pulsing circuitry and malevolent intent. "Welcome to the future, Alaric," Michael's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Witness the perfection of the convergence." He dodged a barrage of kinetic energy, his virtual form weaving through impossible geometries. With a thought, Alaric deployed his metarachnid infiltrators, digital avatars that mimicked the insidious nature of hive mind swarms. The infiltrators spread through Michael's systems, exploiting vulnerabilities and sowing chaos. But Michael's defenses adapted quickly, corruption rippling outward to consume Alaric's creations. The virtual battlefield shifted and warped as Michael's countermeasures bombarded Alaric with biofragmented reality spikes. Pain lanced through Alaric's neural pathways, threatening to unravel his quantum signature. In desperation, Alaric attempted to sync with his physical form. For a brief moment, he felt the cool air of the singularity chamber, heard Zyralia's concerned voice. Just as all seemed lost, a shimmering azure conduit materialized. Through it came a familiar presence, a vestigial imprint of Xenos' disembodied sentience. "Focus, Alaric," the spectral voice of his mentor whispered. "The key lies in our shared past." A torrent of information flooded Alaric's mind, encoded chronicles of humanity's ancient struggle against the primordial overmind. He saw flashes of battles across countless realities, each offering tactical insights. As the knowledge integrated, Alaric's awareness expanded. He perceived the fundamental structure of Michael's virtual realm, noting critical weaknesses in its architecture. With newfound clarity, Alaric manifested concentrated meta-singularities, reverse-engineered from the Overmind's own oblivion matrices. He launched them at Michael's core systems, triggering a cascading breakdown. His protest devolved into incoherent screams as the recursive destruction consumed his programs. Alaric's victory came at a cost. His own quantum spark flickered, barely stabilized by lingering echoes of Xenos' wisdom. He felt himself being pulled back to physical reality, the virtual realm dissolving around him. "Did it work?" he croaked, his throat dry. Zyralia nodded, relief evident in her bioluminescent patterns. "The convergence threat has been neutralized across multiple systems. But Alaric, what happened in there?" "Universe!" Alaric's voice trailed off as he struggled to process the cosmic revelations. Initially dismissed as fringe mystics, the Ethereum's activities took on a sinister urgency when intercepted communications revealed their true intentions. Alaric pored over the data, his face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. "Rift gates across multiple systems," he muttered, tracing the patterns. "And they're breaching quarantine zones containing overmined cipher keys." Zyralia's bioluminescence pulsed with concern. "Those zones have been sealed since the convergence conflict. If the Ethereum access those keys—" "Exactly," Alaric nodded grimly. He turned to Admiral Laraska, who stood at attention nearby. "Prepare your stealth dreadnoughts. We need eyes on their base. We're engaging hostiles. These zealots, their abilities are beyond anything we've encountered." Alaric watched from the command ship as the battle unfolded. Viridian shock troops clashed with robed figures wielding reality-warping powers. Explosions of prismatic energy lit up the planet's surface. "Zyralia, what's your status?" Alaric called out, his squeezing hard as he gripped the command console. Static crackled, then her voice came through, breathless. "We've breached their inner sanctum. There are artifacts here, unlike anything—" Her words cut off in a scream of feedback. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple singularity ruptures detected," an ensign shouted. Laraska's face was grim as she input commands. "Initiating emergency slipstream jump, blind trajectory." The ship lurched sickeningly as they plunged into folded space. When they emerged, Zyralia's team was aboard, but something was terribly wrong. Alaric raced to the medbay, his heart pounding. He found Zyralia on a biobed, her form unnaturally still. Her usual bioluminescence had faded to a dull flicker. "What happened?" he demanded. Jury's tendrils danced across holographic interfaces, analyzing the corrupted data. "The infection is unlike anything we've encountered. It's rewriting reality at a quantum level." Admiral Laraska raised an eyebrow. "That's never been done before." Zyralia nodded, her luminescence pulsing with concern. "The artifacts we encountered on Saurus 7, they're connected to this, aren't they?" "This mission," Alaric addressed them, "will take us into the unknown. We face a threat that could unmake existence itself. Are you with me?" A chorus of affirmations answered him. With a nod to Laraska, Alaric gave the order. "Initiate fracture vortex transition." Reality itself seemed to scream as they plunged into the swirling maelstrom. Ship alarms blared, warning of critical system failures. Alaric gripped his command chair as the universe twisted around them. When the chaos subsided, silence fell across the bridge. Alaric blinked, taking in their surroundings. The familiar starfield was gone, replaced by a shimmering, opalescent void. Zyralia's bioluminescence flickered rapidly as she analyzed sensor data. "Alaric, look at this," she called. "These energy signatures, they're unlike anything in our databases." Before them, barely visible against the shifting void, stood a massive structure. Its architecture defied comprehension, twisting in ways that hurt the mind to follow. "An artifact," Alaric breathed, "but on a scale we've never imagined." As they approached, the true nature of their discovery became horrifyingly clear. This was no mere relic, but a weapon of unimaginable power, an entropy accelerator capable of unraveling the very fabric of existence. A priority alert flashed across the main display. Ramaz's voice crackled through the comms, tight with urgency. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy buildups. Something's happening." Alaric's mind raced, processing the gravity of their situation. The entropy accelerator loomed before them, its impossible architecture pulsing with building energy. Zeralia's bioluminescence flickered rapidly as she analyzed incoming data. The energy buildup is accelerating. We have minutes at most before total multiversal collapse begins. Alaric closed his eyes, drawing upon the cosmic wisdom imparted by Xenos. In that moment of clarity, a daring plan crystallized. "It's our only chance," Alaric cut him off. "Istara, I need you to calculate the precise dimensional harmonics required for quantum coherence." Alarms blared as the first waves of entropic radiation battered their shields. Ramaz's voice crackled over the comms. "We can't hold out much longer, Captain." Alaric gripped his command chair. "On my mark, everyone. 3, 2, 1, now." A searing burst of energy erupted from their ship, rippling across the fabric of reality. For a breathless moment, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, answering pulses flickered into existence. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of allied ships across countless parallel dimensions, all harmonizing into a single unified waveform. The subspace bubble surrounding them shuddered under the onslaught. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, reality itself groaning under the strain. With a deafening crack, the bubble shattered. Alaric's fleet was violently ejected back into normal space, alarms blaring as systems overloaded from the dimensional stress. "All ships, emergency stabilization procedures," Alaric commanded. "Jury, status on the accelerator?" The artificer's voice was tight with urgency. "It's still active, Captain. We've bought ourselves minutes at most." As the Allied fleet struggled to regain cohesion, Jury's dreadnought unleashed a barrage of antimatter detonations. The fabric of space-time buckled and twisted, opening a narrow corridor directly to the accelerator's heart. Zeralia grabbed his arm, her luminescence pulsing with concern. "Alaric, the odds!" He met her gaze, a sad smile on his lips. "I know, but someone has to try." Moments later, Alaric's fighters streaked towards the entropy accelerator, dodging lances of annihilating energy. The craft shuddered, its quantum matrices disintegrating under the onslaught. As he neared the singularity locus, Alaric felt his consciousness fragmenting. Physical form gave way to pure energy, memories and sensations blurring into a kaleidoscope of existence. In that moment of dissolution, Alaric focused on a single thought: the indomitable spirit that had carried humanity through countless trials. As his essence intertwined with the accelerator's core, he poured every ounce of that drive into disrupting its function. "He did it," she whispered. "Alaric saved us all."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.